What the heck? Huh. Hey folks, Martyupnorth. Nice day at home today. It's actually warmed up quite a bit. If I step back, I'm not dressed very. I don't need to be dressed for the deep winter, but today's a perfect day for me to finally set up the teepee. So part two of my hot tent setup is I ordered a teepee from a company called OneTigris in the U.S. It's the Smokey Hut teepee. So I look forward to setting it up. I got a nice patch close to the house where there's no snow. So it'll make it easy for me to set up. So the challenge in winter is actually, I'm going to use my axe, because when the ground is frozen, driving pegs in is not always easy, but the flip side is that you don't have to drive them in deep. Alright, I got it loose. Now I'm going to put the pole up the middle. Comes with a basic center pole. Now I need to open the door. That's why I always say you need to not test your gear, but familiarize yourself with your new gear at home. To loosen and restake several times, which is not easy when the ground is frozen, but fundamentally looks really good. Now I got a couple of places where I can put guy lines, which I will do next. So it works really good. So I got a couple of extra pegs. It only came with 8. I love these cam levers. You can tighten your guy lines easily, so there's room for 8 guy lines, so I'll have to get more pegs, but fundamentally it's a very windy day right now, and it's holding just fine. Yeah, it's on a slope, but so I added guy lines all around. I only staked in a couple because I don't have enough stakes, but looks pretty pretty solid. Very impressed. All right. Wow. One person, definitely 2 people will be lying down in here. 1, 2, and a stove. We'll figure it out, but it's probably tight for 2 people unless they're a couple, me and my wife, could be side by side and the stove on that side, but I'm going to set up the stove and we'll judge it with the stove. There's the flap, and it can be rolled up and tied up, and then there's a Velcro piece there that becomes the stove jack. I'll show you that in a second. Alright, this just Velcroed on here, and the flap can come back down. I put this little rope here to be able to roll up the flap. I don't like that. That's flimsy, but we'll figure it out. Basically it. And I got these two pieces to put on the outside, act as a spark arrestor. There you have it. So the idea is this is flame resistant, melt resistant, but I can see how, that's what I didn't like. This, I have to do something about that. All that, every time that touches, that's gonna melt. That's better. I just rolled it the other way. How do you think we lie down two people in here? You go, it's tight with two, but you go across there. Yeah. And then I go across here. It's tight for two people. But, well, it's not tight. Tika.
Less tight than a two-man tent would be.
Hey?
You just said it's a two-man tent.
No. Tika! Could somebody be back there?
Probably.
It's, come on in, hun. That's the danger, is it's
not windy in here. Actually better than outside.
Well, it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it's a tent on. It's a tent.
Yeah, well, it is kind of cold outside right now.
Outside?
As far as windy.
So, they always put the stove in the middle.
It's not lit.
No, it's not lit, but where do two people sleep in it? Not behind the fire, so it's in front. It's sort of at an angle there. Two, yeah.
Side.
It's crowded, but you can fit two. There's room for two people in here. If it was two people that are friendly, they could be side by side. But, I mean, on my thermarest, I'll be fine here. And do you have your length over there, Karen, in the back side?
Ray, lay down.
Ray?
Yeah, go ahead, thanks.
Your feet are kind of touching, but...
I could go further that way, too.
Yeah, at an angle a bit. Yeah, there's room. It's doable. It's just that the stove is dangerous when it's hot, but as long as one guy's sleeping here, opens it up, stokes it a little bit, keep your pile of wood right here.
Thing around it so that you wouldn't touch it? Like
Well,
a
you
little
could-
netting or some
You
sort?
you could put rocks around it.
Right, so then if you rolled over, you'd know that you touched it.
Yeah, you'd put rocks for sure if
To
you're.
keep it stable?
Yeah.
Because if it's...
There's a hook for various things, a couple of vents. So the tent, a couple of standard features, found on almost every tent on the market. open. If you happen to be somewhere where there's a tree overhead, I suppose, you can hang it from a tree instead of using a pole in the middle. You can see the height. It's 5'2" at the center. I'm a whopping 5'8". So it came with everything here except 7 of these guy lines that I added, and the stove, of course. And I could probably upgrade the middle pole to something maybe carbon fiber, but overall the tent weighs less than 2.5 pounds, so it's not very heavy. So it's pretty awesome shelter for one person for sure. With a stove, 2 people without the stove. This will be a fantastic summer shelter as well as a winter shelter. I'm going to try it in the summer because of its lightweight and its spaciousness. And apparently it's not a big problem with the bugs because they do come in, but they tend to fly up and congregate at the top of the tent. So we'll see what happens. All right, so I'm back inside. The tent setup. It was a challenge to set up the tent. I've never set up a teepee before, but I figured it out pretty quickly. It's an extra challenge because the ground was frozen. If the ground was thawed, then I could, it's a lot easier to maneuver the stakes and move them around. But, so, like I said outdoors, this is actually, so the tent is by OneTigris. So I got it online, not directly from OneTigris. I got it through Amazon, and I paid $189 Canadian delivered, which is phenomenal. And it's by OneTigris. Now, their line of tents is called the Black Orca tents, and this one is actually the Smokey Hut. So it's listed as a 2-person tent, and I would agree that it's definitely a 2-person tent. And I'll put the spec in the video. See what it is in grams. 1,285. So 1,285. So there's about 450 grams to a pound. So yeah, it's almost 3 pounds. I'll do the proper conversion. It came with the pole, and it came with some stakes. So the pole, as is, weighs in grams 353 grams for the poles and the stakes, and I added a few things. 175 grams of stakes. That sounds good. So the only thing I added to the, look at that, I've already got one bent. Now I have some titanium stakes downstairs that I'll probably use for this instead. But what I've added to each stake is a little piece of 2mm rope, so I can make pulling them out easier. But it came with 8 stakes and some guy wires, but I replaced the guy wires with a different set, so I guess I could take these out. So there you go. So it's quick. This is not intended to be a review. The tent has been reviewed on many websites and by other viewers. That's why I selected it. And I want to make a comment too. When I set it up outside, I think I said so, but it's not a test of the tent. I don't need to test the tent. The tent has been tested by the manufacturer, by other users. I'm impressed by it. I'm going to take it out. What I was doing in the yard when I set up a product in my yard is I'm actually familiarizing myself with it and getting used to it. I'm not testing it. So I wanted to set it up in the yard so that I'm familiar with it, so that when I go out in the field, especially if it's a cold day, I won't be mucking around. And you saw when I set it up in my yard, I did a few slight improvements. I added these little strings and I added some guy wires. So that's my setup. So the next video will be me going out in the field with the tent and the stove and sleeping overnight in my hot tent.